heart in mourning, Rondu knelt beside his mother's bed, his heart choked with pain and loss. Tears kept falling, rolling down his face uncontrollably. The world around Rondu seemed to fade away, leaving only the image of Durika with her eyes closed, her face peaceful but tired. The weight of her absence pressed heavily on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Memories in motion. As he held his mother's hand tightly, feeling the last warmth from her old hands, memories of her flashed through his mind like a fast-forwarded film. He saw the happy days they had spent together, the times Durika had taken care of and comforted him as a child, and even the moments when her gentle smile had filled him with a sense of security and love. Rondu felt lost and empty, as if an important part of himself had been separated and lost forever. Choking sobs rang out, each sound filled with unspeakable pain. "Mom, Mom," Rondu called desperately, his voice trembling and weak. He hoped that if he called just one more time, his mother would wake up, smile, and say that it was all just a bad dream. Facing reality. But Durika still lay there, no longer moving, no longer responding. Rondu felt like he was being pushed into a deep pit of despair. He hugged his mother's thin body tightly, wishing he could hold her back a little longer. But all efforts were in vain. Durika was gone, leaving Rondu to face a cruel and painful reality. He looked around the room, once filled with laughter and joy, now steeped in silence and sadness. Every object, every little corner of the house reminded Rondu of his mother, deepening his sorrow. The curtains she had sewn with care, the chair where she used to sit and tell stories, all these now seemed to mock his grief. The weight of loss. Finally, Rondu sat listlessly next to his mother's bed, his eyes red and tired. The pain of losing his mother was like a huge wave that swept away everything, leaving a wound in his heart that would never heal. He knew that life would never be the same again, but in the depths of his pain, he silently promised to take care of his two younger siblings on his mother's behalf, to live a life worthy of her love and sacrifice. The funeral preparations. Rondu held his mother's funeral with boundless mercy. Everyone in the village attended Durika's funeral. The villagers had always admired Durika for her kindness and strength, and their presence was a testament to the impact she had had on their lives. A month of shadows. Rondu sat absent-mindedly in the small room, the pale afternoon sunlight filtering through the window, creating dim streaks of light on the floor. A month had passed since Durika's funeral, but Rondu was far from finding peace. Instead, he began experiencing disturbing and confusing changes in his behavior and mood. The days passed by in a blur, with Rondu constantly feeling as if he were lost in his own world. The first signs. At first, these changes were just fleeting moments. Rondu frequently lost memory of things he had done or conversations that had taken place. He was surprised when people mentioned events that he didn't remember, as if he hadn't been there at all. The gaps in his memory made Rondu feel insecure and confused, as though his life were divided into discrete, disjointed pieces. Every day, Rondu felt more disconnected from himself and the world around him. There were times when he looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back at him. It felt as if he were observing his life from the outside, unable to understand why he'd become like this. He began to have strange experiences, as if everything around him no longer truly existed. Sounds, images, everything became blurry and distant. The voices. Then the voices started appearing in Rondu's head. At first, they were just vague whispers, but gradually, they became clearer and stronger. Rondu heard different voices, each carrying a distinct personality and emotion. These voices not only tried to communicate, but also sought to express themselves through Rondu's actions and thoughts. He couldn't control them, and they gradually took over his mind. The unseen causes. These sudden changes seemed to have no obvious cause. It appeared that they were a side effect of the blood snake's venom, combined with Durika's sudden departure, giving Rondu the beginnings of multiple personality disorder. He didn't realize that both of these factors had created a perfect storm, resulting in the fragmentation of his identity. With each passing day, Rondu sank deeper into the chaos within his mind. He didn't know who he would become or what he would do next. The personalities within him continued to fight for control, leaving Rondu with a feeling of helplessness and despair. He only knew that his life would never be the same, and the road ahead was full of challenges he had never imagined. An unexpected visit. One afternoon, as Rondu sat in his small room, lost in his thoughts, there was a knock on the door. It was Kus, an old friend, carrying a mysterious envelope. Rondu did not expect that his life would change once again. Kus handed over the envelope awkwardly, his eyes filled with worry and concern. "I'm sorry for your mother's passing. I had to go away during your mother's death and couldn't attend her funeral," Kus said, his voice sad. Rondu replied softly, "It's okay. Everything's over." Kus hesitated for a moment, then pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Rondu. "What is this?" Rondu asked, his eyes wide with surprise. "I don't know," Kus replied, his voice hesitant, a glimmer of hope. Rondu quickly opened the envelope, his hands shaking. When he saw the picture inside, his heart stopped. It was Flora, the girl he had secretly loved many years ago. Memories of Flora rushed back like a powerful wave, making him unable to believe his eyes. Rondu rubbed his eyes and looked closely at the photo again. It was indeed Flora, with her gentle smile and deep eyes that he could never forget. Accompanying the photo was a short text, "See you at 10 at Tudis restaurant." Rondu felt his heart swell with indescribable joy. "Who gave you this envelope?" he asked, his voice shaking with emotion. Kus hesitantly replied, Someone gave me this envelope." In his overwhelming joy, Rondu forgot to ask Kus more about the person who had delivered the letter. "What time is it?" he asked urgently. 9 o'clock, Kus replied. A dash for hope. Rondu quickly borrowed his friend's car, filled with excitement and enthusiasm, then sped towards Tudis restaurant, where Flora had arranged to meet. When Rondu left, his figure gradually disappeared behind the trees in front, and Kus stood there, looking very sad and in tears. "I'm sorry, Rondu. I couldn't help it," Kus whispered in regret and heartache. In Rondu's hands, Flora's photo seemed to shine, bringing new hope and joy to his life, even if just for this brief moment. The journey to Tudis. As Rondu drove towards Tudis restaurant, his mind raced with thoughts of Flora. The voices in his head seemed to quiet, replaced by the single, clear image of Flora's face. He felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to reconnect with someone who had once brought light into his life. The journey felt surreal, as if he were moving through a dream. The road ahead seemed to stretch infinitely, but he pressed on, driven by a newfound determination. He imagined what he would say to Flora, how he would explain everything that had happened since they last saw each other. Arriving at the restaurant. When Rondu finally arrived at Tudis restaurant, he took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. He looked around, searching for Flora among the patrons. The restaurant was cozy, with warm lighting and the smell of delicious food wafting through the air. He found a quiet corner and sat down, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of Flora. Time seemed to slow down as he waited, each second stretching into eternity. The anticipation was almost unbearable, but he held on to the hope that Flora would walk through the door at any moment. The headquarters of the Cunning Hyena Gang. At the headquarters of the Cunning Hyena Gang, the dim light of the lamp cast eerie shadows on the rough walls, each bearing traces of bloody battles. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and iron. A hyena scampered into Roos's room, his eyes sparkling with urgency. He handed Roos an envelope. Roos opened it and read the message inside. "See you at 10 at Tudis restaurant. An old friend. Do you remember what happened 10 years ago?" The past unveiled, Roos frowned and turned to the hyena. "Who gave you this letter?" The hyena replied, his voice trembling. "Yes, sir. A gorilla gave me this letter." Roos was taken aback, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. "I don't have a gorilla as a friend. What happened 10 years ago?" Roos pondered, and memories from the past began to flood back. He recalled the encounter with 2 gorillas a decade ago. These 2 gorillas had managed to escape his pursuit. "I remember. I encountered 2 gorillas 10 years ago. There was one that was extremely strong. I want to know who asked me to this meeting." The journey to Tudis. Having finished speaking, Roos gathered 5 other hyenas and the messenger hyena and set out for the meeting place. On the way, Roos couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The unusualness of this meeting filled him with doubt. At Tudis restaurant. Meanwhile, Rondu sat in suspense at Tudis restaurant, waiting for Flora. His heart pounded with anticipation, but his anxiety grew as time passed. Instead of Flora, he saw 7 hyenas enter the restaurant. One of the hyenas, evidently the leader, ordered, "5 of you, follow me now. You stay here. If you see anyone running out, just shoot him." Rondu sensed something was amiss. The hyenas walked toward him, seemingly oblivious to his presence amidst the restaurant's various patrons. Ruse walked past Rondu without recognizing him initially. However, after a few steps, Ruse stopped, sniffing the air as if he had encountered a familiar scent. He turned back and approached Rondu, sniffing more intently. A tense confrontation. "What are you doing?" Rondu asked, his voice filled with annoyance. Ruse replied, "I've seen you somewhere before. I can't forget your smell. Let me try to remember." Suddenly, recognition flashed in Ruse's eyes. "Ah, I remember you. You're the gorilla I met 10 years ago. Honestly, you're extremely lucky to have escaped our bullets. What did you ask me out here for? Did you challenge me?" Rondu replied calmly, "I didn't ask you out. I was expecting someone else." Despite his composed exterior, a feeling of insecurity gnawed at him. He sensed a trap. Here he was, facing an old enemy, without any prior arrangement. Ruse smirked coldly. "Let me guess. 2 of my junior hyenas died miserably at the hands of a gorilla at Blacksmith Ren's house. I guess you are that gorilla." Rondu locked eyes with Ruse, saying nothing, but inside he was preparing for an inevitable confrontation. The atmosphere grew tense, each breath of both men laden with suspense and danger. Memories of the past. As Ruse and Rondu stood face to face, the memories of their past encounter flooded back. Rondu remembered the terror and desperation of that night 10 years ago, and the strength it had taken to survive. Ruse, on the other hand, recalled the humiliation of letting his prey escape, the burning desire for revenge simmering in his heart. Rondu's mind raced. Who could have orchestrated this meeting? Was it truly a coincidence, or was someone pulling the strings behind the scenes? The confrontation, Ruse coldly said, "You escaped from me 10 years ago. Today, you will not escape from here." As soon as Ruse finished speaking, he stepped back and launched a snake towards Rondu. With lightning-fast reflexes, Rondu grabbed the snake with his bare hands and brutally crushed its head. Blood and liquid gushed out from the snake, creating a gruesome scene. The onslaught. The remaining 5 hyenas, no less panicked, launched 5 more snakes towards Rondu. In a moment, Rondu turned around, his coat sleeves fluttering. From inside his coat, he pulled out 5 silver iron bars and deployed silver moonlight. The light of the iron bars sparkled under the restaurant lights, reflecting a deadly beauty. Rondu was focused, his eyes bright and his arms strong. In just a split second, he launched 5 iron bars towards the snakes with incredible speed and accuracy. The iron bars tore through the wind, emitting a sharp hissing sound, piercing each snake perfectly. 5 snakes collapsed on the spot, dying instantly in front of the hyena's horror. A moment of silence. The hyenas stood still, eyes wide open, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. In this world, is there anyone who can launch iron bars so quickly and accurately? Rondu stood there, breathing steadily, cold eyes looking straight at Ruse and the hyenas. Silence prevailed, leaving only the hissing of iron bars and the horror in the eyes of the enemies. The whole space seemed to stop for a moment, to engrave the image of a strong, fierce, and uncompromising Rondu. Silver moonlight became a symbol of precision and strength, and Rondu, a warrior no one dared to underestimate. The gunfire. The sound of gunfire suddenly rang out as the 6 hyenas pulled out their guns and shot at Rondu. The flash of fire from the gun barrels created sparks in the bright space of the restaurant. Rondu, as fast as lightning, continued to pull iron bars from his coat and rushed towards the hyenas. Meanwhile, Rondu dodged the bullets flying at him, his movements as graceful and agile as a dancer in battle. The launched iron bars met the bullets, creating a harsh sound as the metal collided with each other. The first hits, 2 hyenas were hit by the iron bars, their bodies pierced, and they fell to the ground with painful screams. Blood erupted from the wounds, staining the surrounding ground red. The remaining hyenas, including Ruse, suffered injuries to their hands when bullets and iron bars collided, forcing them to drop their weapons. The aftermath, Rondu stood straight, his breathing steady and his eyes unwavering. The iron bars in his hands were like guiding lights in the dark night, ready for any attack. Ruse and the hyenas now realized that they were facing an enemy that could not be easily defeated. A warrior of unparalleled strength and determination. Ruse's desperation. Ruse, face twisted with rage and desperation. He had underestimated Rondu's abilities, and now his men were paying the price. He glanced at the fallen hyenas, then back at Rondu, who stood like an unyielding sentinel. "You've become stronger," Ruse admitted grudgingly, wiping the blood from his hands. "But strength alone won't save you. My men may be down, but I'm far from done." Rondu's gaze remained steady. "You can try, Ruse." The deployment of Snake Fist. Ruse gathered the remaining hyenas, signaling them to deploy the Snake Fist. The hands of the hyena group quickly turned into sharp and precise punches, like iron snakes, striking towards Rondu's chest and face. The surrounding space filled with lightning-fast blows, the air vibrating with the intensity of their attacks. Rondu's counterattack. Rondu quickly retreated, dodging the onslaught of 4 hyenas. Sensing the dangerous situation, he focused his strength on his legs, preparing for a counterattack. In a split second, Rondu used the shadow cloud kick technique, his legs seeming to turn into gloomy clouds, launching powerful and precise kicks. Rondu's kicks struck with deadly accuracy, hitting the bodies of the 4 hyenas. The sound of impact rang out loudly, the hyenas' bodies being forcefully pushed back by the power of the kicks. One hyena was kicked into the air, falling to the ground with a painful thud. Another was hit in the chest, collapsing and gasping for air. Unyielding attack. The remaining 2 hyenas, though injured, still tried to attack Rondu. However, Rondu's determination and skill did not allow them to get any closer. He turned around and performed a powerful spin kick, knocking both hyenas away. Ruse stood watching, his eyes cold but also filled with a begrudging respect for Rondu's strength. The battle became more intense than ever. Every blow, every kick carrying the strength and determination of those fighting for the ultimate goal. Blood and chaos. Blood dripped from Ruse's arm, but he didn't care. His goal was to destroy Rondu by any means necessary. The atmosphere in the restaurant was extremely chaotic. Terrified clients rushed out, their screams adding to the chaos. The hyena assigned to block Rondu's escape hesitated, bewildered by the mass exodus. "I'm told to shoot at anyone running out of the restaurant. But who should I shoot at? There are too many people," he muttered. Fierce assault. Ruse charged with ferocity, delivering 2 powerful kicks towards Rondu. The remaining hyena, following Ruse's command, also attacked with a similar kick. Rondu quickly dodged to the left, his movements as agile as a passing shadow. In just a split second, Rondu turned and delivered a powerful kick to the hyena's chest. The force from his kick was so strong that the hyena was pushed back, its body convulsing. It struggled to breathe, then slowly passed away, dying soon after. The final confrontation. Now, only Ruse was left standing to face Rondu. The space became silent, filled with tension. Ruse's gaze was cold and determined, while Rondu, with composure and battle readiness, looked straight at his final enemy. The confrontation between 2 formidable warriors, each with a strength and will not easily conquered. Preparing for battle, Ruse prepared his fighting stance, his muscles tensed and ready. Rondu maintained his demeanor, knowing that this would be the decisive battle. Every move, every punch, every kick would decide the fate of both. Both understood that only one could emerge victorious from this war. The clash of titans. Ruse lunged forward with a series of rapid punches, his fists like striking vipers. Rondu countered with swift blocks and precise counters, deflecting each blow with calculated precision. The sound of their combat echoed through the empty restaurant, each impact resonating with the force of their wills. Rondu's focus was unbreakable. He dodged, blocked, and struck with a grace and efficiency that belied the intensity of the battle. Ruse, relentless and powerful, pushed forward with brute strength, attempting to overpower Rondu with sheer force. The cold confession. Ruse looked at Rondu coldly and said, "I have never met an opponent as strange as you, as strong as you. Today could be my last day. I do not care." He shouted loudly and performed a turret sweep to knock down Rondu. Rondu just stood still, not moving. Ruse's kick touched Rondu's leg like it was touching an iron bar. Rondu was unmoved, while Ruse's leg was seriously injured. He swallowed the pain and threw another kick, but was stopped by Rondu with a powerful kick. the fire dragon fist, Roos was furious. He rushed forward and threw a punch at Rondu. But Rondu was ready. He used the fire dragon fist technique, quickly breaking Roos's arm and using his other hand to punch him straight in the chest. Roos staggered and fell backwards, in pain and losing his balance. The snake's last strike. As he tried to stand firm, with hatred in his eyes and unyielding determination, Roos threw the remaining snake towards Rondu. Realizing the dangerous situation, Rondu quickly threw an iron bar towards the snake. The force of the launch was stronger than before. The iron bar pierced the snake and pinned it straight into Roos's neck. The final words. Roos rolled his eyes, looked at Rondu, and let out a few words. Although he didn't show any pain, his eyes were filled with surprise and unyielding. He collapsed to the ground, dead in a position of not surrendering, his eyes still wide open, staring at Rondu as a final challenge. Silence. After the battle, the surrounding space became silent, leaving only Rondu standing there, sighing and feeling the peace after the fierce battle. In his heart, emotions were mixed between victory and sadness because of what had happened. The weight of victory. Rondu looked down at the fallen Roos, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The battle had been fierce and brutal, but it was finally over. The tension in the air dissipated, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Rondu's chest heaved as he took deep breaths, trying to process the events that had just transpired. Victory had come at a great cost. The sight of Roos's lifeless body, eyes still wide open in a final defiant challenge, filled Rondu with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. He had won the battle, but at what price? The thrill of victory was tempered by the weight of the lives lost and the violence that had ensued. Reflection and remorse. As he stood there, Rondu couldn't help but reflect on the path that had led him to this moment. The journey had been long and arduous, filled with countless challenges and trials. Each battle had tested his strength, his resolve, and his very essence. He had grown and evolved, but he had also witnessed the darkness within himself and others. The memories of his mother, Flora, and the countless faces of those he had encountered along the way flashed through his mind. Each person had played a part in shaping who he had become, and each loss had left an indelible mark on his soul. He wondered if there was another way, a path that did not involve so much bloodshed and pain. A moment of peace. The silence that enveloped the restaurant was almost surreal. The chaos and violence that had filled the space moments before seemed like a distant memory. Rondu closed his eyes, allowing himself a moment of respite. The peace that settled over him was fragile, but it was a welcome relief. As he stood there, Rondu felt a gentle breeze brush against his face, as if the spirits of those who had fallen were offering their blessings. He took a deep breath, savoring the calmness that filled his heart. The witness. The lone hyena stood outside the restaurant, witnessing the entire brutal scene unfold inside. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched Rondu systematically destroy all the hyenas, including Roos. Fear and shock coursed through his veins, and not daring to stay any longer, he quickly got on his motorbike and fled the scene. The report. Returning to the headquarters of the cunning hyena gang, the hyena burst into the office of Busy, Roos's father. Breathless and pale, he quickly reported everything he had seen. "Boss, Roos is dead," he stammered, his voice trembling with fear and sorrow. "Rondu killed him. He killed them all." A storm of grief, Busy felt like he had been struck by lightning. For a moment, he stood stunned, unable to believe what he had just heard. Then, like a storm, extreme pain overwhelmed him. He let out a guttural scream, his cry echoing throughout the room, expressing a pain that could not be put into words. Tears flowed from Busy's old eyes, and he collapsed, his shoulders shaking from sobbing. In his mind, memories of Roos played like an unending reel. The days when Roos was young, the times father and son faced challenges together, and Roos's rise to become a strong warrior in the gang. All of that was now just a thing of the past. The memories. As Busy wept, vivid memories flooded his mind. He saw Roos as a little boy, his innocent eyes filled with wonder and admiration for his father. He remembered teaching Roos to ride a bike, their laughter echoing through the neighborhood. He recalled the proud day when Roos had taken his first steps towards becoming a member of the gang, his eyes burning with determination. Each memory was a stab to Busy's heart. The pain of losing his son was not just the pain of losing a loved one. It was the agony of a father who had failed to protect the child he cherished most. This loss was like a deep wound that would never heal. Buzi felt as if the whole world was collapsing around him, everything becoming meaningless without Ruse by his side. The sobs of despair. "Ruse, my son." Buzi muttered through his sobs, his eyes red and filled with tears. "Why is it like this? Why did God take away my child?" The room was filled with the sound of his despair. Buzi's cries were raw and primal, a father's heartbreak laid bare. He pounded his fists against the floor, his body racked with grief. The hyena who had brought the news stood silently, his own eyes filled with tears, feeling the weight of his leader's pain, the rage within. As the storm of grief slowly began to subside, a new emotion took hold of Buzi: anger. It started as a small flicker, but quickly grew into a raging inferno. The pain of loss transformed into a burning desire for revenge. Buzi's tear-streaked face twisted with fury. "Rondu," he spat the name with venom, "you will pay for this. You will suffer for what you have done to my son." Buzi's eyes, once filled with sorrow, now blazed with hatred. The loss of Ruse had left a void in his heart, and he intended to fill it with the blood of his son's murderer. The plan for vengeance. Buzi rose to his feet, his body trembling with the force of his rage. He turned to the hyena who had brought the news. "Gather the gang," he commanded, his voice cold and hard. "We are going to hunt Rondu down. No matter where he hides, no matter how long it takes, we will find him and we will kill him." The hyena nodded, understanding the gravity of Buzi's words. He quickly left the room to carry out the order, knowing that Buzi's wrath was a force to be reckoned with.